Well, we got some active weather still in the edges, I guess you could say, of the country, with the north central plains doing okay, but we'll highlight each of these hazards coming up in today's edition of Weather to Watch. We have some weather hazards on the horizon. This is the period Friday through Tuesday, but we have some trouble on the edges of the country, I guess you could say. Some of it's heat, some of it is severe weather, some of it is heavier rains. Let's take a look at the current loop here on the visible satellite loop, one of the best images produced in meteorology, really. It's just a vivid shot, and you can see all kinds of activity here. You can see a huge swirl of a storm way off in the Atlantic. Much of the Northeast and the New England area is pretty good for now. Still have this slow-moving upper-level system in the Southeast, this very long front that has been causing trouble for days in the Central Plains, which looks like it's moving away, but it really isn't, because the tail end of it is going to be hanging around for a while. Much of the Northern Plains has either mid or high-level cloudiness, a little bit of cumulo activity there, some showers perhaps developing up in that part of the world. Let's take a look at the 500 millibar flow. This is kind of a guideline to what generally the weather is doing. And so you see the winds are assumed to be flowing along and just parallel to these red lines. In fact, they're even indicated there if you know how to read those wind barbs. There's that slow-moving system in Florida. A little disturbance down here in the southwest. Another one back here in Nevada and California. And just generally speaking, the flow like this keeps the cool air up here and the warmer, more humid air down here. So, yeah, the northern plains are looking a little cool. Still plenty of moisture, so that's why we have these rain issues and continued severe thunderstorm issues in the south plains and even in the central plains. Well, here's a radar loop here. Late on this Wednesday afternoon, you can see the extensive rains in Atlanta and covering much of South Carolina. Still some active showers and thunderstorms there in South Florida. But what catches your attention definitely is the weather system producing rain from Ontario, north of Toronto, all the way through northern Indiana, down into Missouri, down into Arkansas, and down into the area between Dallas and Houston. You can see some of those instability showers we showed you on the satellite loop up there in North Dakota. Not severe activity, though. Some of this might be, however, in the Four Corners region. We'll detail that in a minute. Here's the most active, probably most, they're not really severe thunderstorms, at least not yet, but this has produced some very heavy rainfall. I live here in Springfield. We had some gushers, gully washers here. The flood watch is still in effect back here, but it will likely be allowed to expire as this activity is clearly moving away for a while. There might be some severe weather in this, and let's take a look at those outlooks. An elongated area of level 1 out of 5 severe weather threats from San Antonio up through western Arkansas, southeast Missouri, and up to Detroit, covering much of Indiana. You saw on the radar there are some thunderstorms in that area. In fact, some of these might actually flare up in this area here. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the highest probability exists there on the border area between New Mexico and Texas. And you saw some of those showers rotating around the Four Corners. The ones on the more unstable side are the ones that have a shot of producing severe weather. And maybe some tornadoes in that area, a 2% chance, right along I-40 there from Santa Fe almost to Lubbock and Amarillo, Texas. And then there's that other thing I was talking about. There's a 2% tornado risk right along that front from St. Louis up through, Champaign, Urbana, or maybe Decatur would be included in that. Indianapolis, too, would be included in that as well. Now, every morning I produce a severe thunderstorm outlooks video. It's exclusively dedicated just to severe thunderstorm outlooks, and if you want to get a glimpse at what some of those other outlooks are that I showed you on that first slide, it'll go for the next 7 days in great detail, so you'll probably want to check that out from this morning. It's produced every morning after the Storm Prediction Center does their morning update. Also highlighted some heavy rain. Certainly Oklahoma wins the prize here with 4 or 5 inch totals here over the next 5 days. And again, some of this has already fallen here through Missouri, but more is expected. And then we do have a little bit of a blip up here along the front in New England and also through parts of Pennsylvania, maybe New York State. And we can take a look at what the government has issued in terms of heavy rain hazards. So slight is the yellow. So it's 2 out of really 4 categories. So certainly that radar activity I showed you is valid. That southeast storm system. And the other just laggy kind of, remember on the 500 millibar flow, we just had little short waves moving around. That's just going to keep tapping this area. Now, much of this area is pretty dry, but unfortunately the driest of it all is back down through here. So this isn't really targeting those areas, but it's pretty close. Then we go to Thursday, and the heavy rain hazard once again focuses on southern Kansas, Oklahoma, and parts of northwest Texas. Again, remember the rainfall totals for this area were 4, 5, maybe 6 inches. So that explains that. Still have that slow-moving system out here. And then by Friday, still, this is the third day in a row where yellow touches parts of Oklahoma. So you can just definitely tell that they are under the gun for some heavy rain as well. You also saw on the first graph, we have some heat building in. So on Sunday, it looks like San Antonio will be 100 degrees. Actually, that's Austin, but 100 and 102 degrees around San Antonio too, and a lot of 100-degree high temperatures, including possibly right around the Houston area. Very, very hot condition down there. And I was highlighting that in some of my videos. While all the moisture and the unstable air is up here, there's a ridge of high pressure aloft down here. So that always means hot weather. And it is certainly settling into South Texas for sure. Then we gaze our attention up to the Northwest, Pacific Northwest. This is on Tuesday. These are all the GFS models, ideas of high temperatures, but the interior of Washington and Oregon, very hot indeed, with 100-degree temperatures showing up or close to it through much of that region. This is the time of year where I start talking about the tropical storm or hurricane forecasts. There isn't any outlook for the Atlantic, but there is another storm developing in the Pacific. Pretty good chance of formation that would hug the Mexico coast, but not really affect coastal areas of Mexico very much. Most of these storms with time go out and fade as they go into the colder waters, which are naturally flowing southward along the coast of Baja there. But the ones that do manage to go this way sometimes, and it's too early to tell, it can survive longer. And some of those get as far west as Hawaii, not very often though. And this one doesn't look particularly exciting, but it might be something interesting to look at on the satellite image here, in a couple of days. Let's take a look at some temperatures here. This is the high temperature forecast for Thursday. New England, speaking of heat, will be pretty hot on Thursday, tomorrow, with temperatures close to 90, if not hitting that in parts of Maine. Meanwhile, we still continue with our very cool bias, the green and the blue colors. Dodge will only be 69 degrees tomorrow. Goodland, Kansas, 68. Scottsbluff, 66. So very, very cool there. Chicago will only be 71 degrees on Thursday. And the heat's already starting to build out in the northwest. And then if we go to Saturday, that's when that really starts to take effect up in the Pacific Northwest, with interior temperatures in the 90s almost everywhere. And New England getting a cool down and warming up across the southern plains as well. Skipping ahead 2 more days to Monday, still a very cool bias across much of the central U.S. and the eastern U.S. And then you can see on Monday, that's the day before I showed you those 100-degree interior temperatures. They're starting to get there on Monday. Places like Spokane and interior areas of Oregon getting close to 90 degrees. And if we go beyond that, this is the forecast for temperatures the day after, or the day of, I showed you those highs, Tuesday through Saturday. So still pretty hot. That implies really a ridge of high pressure aloft is building here. Meanwhile, a cooler pattern across the central plains. This is beyond what we're experiencing right now. This is going to be a prolonged cool start to June, because many of these areas are already seeing, as you saw, below normal temperatures for the next 5 days, and the Tuesday through Saturday period looks to mirror that. So yeah, it's going to start kind of cool and definitely wet in those areas to start with. The wet weather does shift on the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook down to southern Texas. That's critical because they're in some of the worst drought conditions, and after the heat they're going to experience, they could use that. And some of this rain, while it may not be focused in where it's needed the most, is coming pretty close. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.